really only got to meet you as a person through the computer in the last year. But I just, like, people may not know this, but I was smitten within seconds of meeting you. And I'm so stoked to be able to do this. And I'm so excited that you just have such a wonderful, beautiful, big-hearted book for us to celebrate tonight.
Oh, great.
How has this week been releasing it out into the world?
Well, you know, I think it's close to, it's your professional equivalent of having a baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody wants to come and see the baby, after you have the baby. I think they want to just check, is the kid all right? So it's the same with a book. And Taylor, we've talked about a lot of different things before about the publishing industry. But what's wonderful about this book is sometimes a book will come out that you hope will matter in the moment that it comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And this one kind of hits some notes, I think.
Yeah.
People are feeling things now that they haven't felt either in a long time or ever.
Yeah. Well, one of the questions that I want to ask you a little bit later is about the timing of this story, because you've written a lot of novels. Is this your 18th novel?
I think so. Yeah, because I've done a couple nonfictions. Yeah,
right.
But 20
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So later I want to get into this question of why now for this story. But before we do any of that, for the people that are here and are stoked because they just think, I don't care what the book's about, it's Adriana Trigiani, I'm going to buy it. Can you tell them, what is The Good Left Undone about?
The Good Left Undone is essentially the story of a woman who's 81 years old, who worked as a bookkeeper in her family jewelry business in Viareggio, Italy. And she's lived there since she was 5. Her granddaughter's getting married, and in the Italian tradition, you give a piece of jewelry to the person getting married. And this is not like Grandma with the cookie jar. Matilda is complicated. I think at one point in the novel, she says, hey, when you meet an old lady and she's mean, she's got her reasons. Okay. So, which I love.
You have a lot of really good, like, one-liners in here. And that is one of them.
I love me a one-liner.
Yeah.
It's got to be organic to the whole, Yeah. But she's a character. She reminds me of my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandmothers were with me when I was writing this, and my mother a great deal. And weirdly, also thought about my daughter a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is about the passing on of the family story. And nobody's going to do it but the woman. I mean, the men don't really do it. The women do it. And if the women don't do it, it doesn't get done. And I also noticed this very interesting thing, which was the more prosperous a family becomes, the more they lose touch with that family story.
Mm.
So those were my kind of the rivers upon which the whole thing went. And then just this astonishing story that I learned when I was directing a movie in Scotland. And I really think it changed my plates.
Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit more about that, because it sounds like, Scotland's obviously a big part of this book, but it sounds like the inspiration came from a very specific time for you.
Absolutely. When you're directing a movie, you're very vulnerable. It's the worst job in that you're lonely, and the best job in that it's your imagination that is being fulfilled. And I love actors, and they bring a story alive, right? So all of that was sort of in place. And then it's the idea of, can I execute the vision? So I am the type of person who yields to the spirits. And I was praying to the Blessed Mother during this thing, like, oh, don't let me screw this up. And I went to a church in Glasgow by myself, and I was tooling around, and there was a wedding going on. And I was taught when I was a kid that to see a bride on her wedding day is lucky. So I have a phone full of people I don't know, brides. I don't know. I take it if I'm somewhere doing a book signing, I see a bride, and if I'm with my family, because my husband, stop the car, and I take a picture of her, So that'll give you kind of the emotional feeling around it. And so the granddaughter, when she gets to pick her jewelry, and the granddaughter is Anina, and she's a little bit of a flibbity gibbet, you know, she just wants to marry Paolo, and Paolo's really cute, and they live together in Lucca. You get the scene. And then it's the deepening of the granddaughter through the family story. She has to face some things too. When she goes to take a piece of jewelry, she picks up the one thing that our character Matilda, the grandmother, doesn't want to give her. And it's a watch fob that you wear that has an upside down face. Now, the nurses that are listening know what that is. They have they don't look at a wristwatch. They have it on a watch fob with the face upside down, so they can take your pulse and do things with the clock right here. So, and this is interesting looking. And so Anina wants it. She doesn't want any of the other traditional stuff. And the grandmother says, you can have anything but that, but why can't I have it? She didn't even know, Anina did not know that Matilda's mother, her great grandmother, was a nurse. So that's where the story explodes.
Yeah.
Little watch.
So let's talk about, and
Taylor, just a sidebar, am I answering these questions at all? Are the people
yes. Well, also here's the thing. And I really love moderating events. I just have always loved it. But sometimes you get an author who, like, you know, you're trying to like lead them and get them to give you something juicy. And I just had this moment as you were talking, and I was like, I don't need to do anything. Adriana knows exactly, like, you're going to give everybody what they want. You don't need me to guide you. But
thank goodness.
I will say this, you know, I love stories, and we'll get into this too, but I love stories that talk about the impact of generations between families, that it is so much, especially when you have generations of women, we see how much the past affects the present. And so let's talk about, one, I want to get into how that unfolds in the book and why you wanted to tell that story. But let's start with these women. We've got Dominica, we've got Matilda, and Anina. So tell us a little bit about all three.
You know, isn't it funny? We never talk about Nicolina, who is the mother of Anina,
right,
and the daughter of Matilda. We don't talk about her because she's put upon, she's forgettable. And and that's one of my favorite things about her, is that in the story, she's the one who like runs all the errands and takes care of the parents, but her brother comes home and he's the prince.
Yes. Well, so I wanted to talk about that too, right? Because we're really focusing on three women in this story, but we're talking about spanning 4 generations.
Right.
And so tell us about these women and why you chose them and how you created them.
Well, you know, when you look around the world and you look at women, you realize, you know, when we look at history, that 50% of it has gone unrecorded. It just has. We don't know 50% of what's happened because women aren't in history. That's interesting. And I listen, it's not a grudge match. I'm married, you know, I try to get along. But it's not right. And if you're losing 50% of the stories off the top of the stories that you're not telling, humanity is not as rich as it should be. And then there's always this surprise. Oh, I didn't know a woman did that. I didn't know she did that. And yet within the sound of my voice, including your family, you know that there were women who raised children alone due to all kinds of circumstances. You know that there were women who went to school at night to get ahead. You know that there are women who work 2 and 3 jobs to support their families. I mean, these are not small things. These are historic. They changed the course of a life. And in the case of this character, in the midst of this is a war. And here's the deal on war to me, and maybe, and I don't like to simplify it, but perhaps I should. Some kook madman makes a decision and millions of people die for that madman's reasoning. And we stand by and go, isn't it terrible? Because we feel helpless.
Mhm.
Well, why is the one guy so powerful and we're all helpless? That doesn't make sense to me. And in a family, that's also true.
Mhm.
It's like a family is, it's a construct of your own imagination. Because we're mothers and we know being a mother is we invent being a mother. Now we have our mothers as role models and our grandmothers hopefully as role models and our aunts and women in our lives that we respect. But really we're making it up. So if we're making up the story, we should tell the story
Mhm.
because we own the story. So when we're talking about women, we have to get bold about this in a certain way. And I'm always encouraging women to write down the family story. And I said, don't make a big deal out of it. I know for some people, writing is painful. They'd rather read, but you don't have to. It does not have to be in the tradition of anything you've ever seen. It can just be, oh, I remember my grandmother's kitchen in Cincinnati and the smell of that pumpkin pie on Thanksgiving morning. That's all.
Yeah.
Give the family a sense of it.
There's
Right.
well, I'm gonna ask more, but there's this website called Storyworth. I don't know if you have
Okay, so
yeah.
a lady just mentioned it at a book signing.
Yeah.
Storyworth. Yeah, she's doing
great.
it.
It's great. And I bought it for my husband's grandmother because she just has the best stories, and they're, you get I get the sense that, she hasn't been asked that many questions, about what was it like when you were first married? What was this like? Or, oh, there's a little thing she'll say and I'll say, well, oh, tell me more about that. And I get her to open up, and it's the most fun thing in the world to learn about, what came before and what, because maybe it didn't lead to me because it's my husband's family, but, it's like, this is the story of my daughter, all of this is leading for me to my daughter who will take it on. And so I bought her Storyworth, and she goes through and she does the questions every once in a while, and the things that come out, and you realize that, just as you were saying, in terms of the story of the family is really held by the women. It's so often that when we're asking men about their lives, we're asking them about what they went out and did. And women, it's certainly, until recent history, stayed home, stayed with their children. They stayed and fought in the house. And so that sense of tradition and that sense of, yeah, I get it. Like, grandpa went and he did this cool thing, but talk to me about what were Sunday dinners like, and what were the meals that you cooked, and what that to me is like the juicy part of what it is to be a family. What are those
also
things?
Taylor, you're hitting on something important, because a lot of times women do things, but then they don't, it's not recorded, nor do they talk about it. Now, the home certainly is central in the child raising.
Right.
But if you're talking about my grandmothers, both of them own their own businesses. And
Yes.
so I know that's true in your family. People did their thing. And my grandmother, I got a letter from my dad's friend. My father was born in 1933, and from my dad's friend, and my father's no longer with us. And he was telling me how my grandmother could drive in the 40s and how cool that was that she could drive. And then my brother told me a story that my grandmother was really into cars and she could name all her cars. And then I began going through family photos and looking at the cars. This is the kind of rabbit holes you kind of go down when the history is discussed. Now, that's a small thing, but it's important.
But here's what's interesting, right? Because the story of a family is so often held by the women, because the women are the ones who are holding the family together, right? But what gets lost is exactly what you were talking about, which is the story of women on their own, when they're not defined by their role as a mother. What is their story that maybe doesn't have anything to do with what has led through the generations? What was their time for themselves? What was their passion?
Well, a lot of people are surprised to find out that those women in the 20s, in the 1920s in America, were working in factories. And the reason they bobbed their hair was to get caught in machinery. Okay. So my grandmother had the short haircut, cute, right? And worked in a mill, and she was a forelady by the time she was 14. I tell you this because it's playing right into what you're saying,
Yeah.
which is that generation. And by the way, that generation was more likely to be sexually active
Mm.
than my mother's generation.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And it
I didn't
became
know that.
down again. But my mother was a professional librarian. And by professional, I mean she's an architectural librarian and she started a university library. I mean, my mother was something.
Mm-hmm.
But my mother was of that generation where, you know, she had her kids in the late 50s and 60s, 7 of us, and she gave up her career.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to say you never had to salt anything at the table with my mother because she was crying into it all the time. She's so like, I miss the library, you know, with all these kids running around. She was an excellent, excellent, beautiful mother, selfless. But we pay a price when we give up our work
Mm-hmm.
that we're meant to do.
Yeah.
But my mother was expected to. By whom? By that, by my father.
Of course. Yeah. Well, so let's talk about these generations, because I think it's interesting. It's, you know, there's always, you can put a piece of yourself in your work, and yet the work has nothing to do with yourself. And I feel that so often. This does feel like, you took some inspiration from the love and affection you have for the women that came before you, your grandmother, your mother, and your daughter, right? And I think it's interesting that this story is really focused on 3 women in particular, which and you, where you would fit in that space. That's it's Nicolina, right? Nicolina?
Hi, Nicolina.
Yeah, right. And which is kind of interesting, because I know, for instance, we've talked about, we both have only children who are daughters.
Or daughters, yeah.
And I know how much you adore your daughter. And I know that you dedicated this to her. So I would love to know, why did you dedicate this book to her? You have written so beautifully in the acknowledgments about it, but I would just love for you to talk a little bit about it feels very much like there's a lot of love for your family in this novel.
There sure is. I mean, my mother's gone, but she's not.
Yeah.
She's with me right now. You know, it's a different spiritual commitment when they're no longer physically with you. And you know, the luscious aspect of writing a book is that you're with the characters all the time, even when you're sleeping. So yeah. I felt so close to my grandmothers and to my mother during this, but also to my daughter. Now, I've shared stuff with you privately that, you know, first of all, I'm a privacy hound about my kid, as you are about yours.
Sure.
Because you know how I feel about this, Taylor, and I told you this. I did not allow her on social media. I said, when you're 18, go on social media. I don't think it's good for children. Now, I'm not some know-it-all mother. I was the mother who said she'd never watch television. And my father, before he died, said, are you crazy? She would be like somebody from another time. She wouldn't know what, she has to have she has to be engaged culturally.
Yeah.
And so then I understood that, but I'm very much against it. And I will tell you why. I see the same vacant expressions on young women. And what is that? You're the same, you see what I see, and we're like horrified by it. It's like they're posing in these fake smiles, and everything's plucked and primed, and you know, it's sad to me. And I said this about my daughter, because just like you, the trajectory of my career, of course, you're younger than me, but the trajectory of my career is similar to yours in terms of like how you're lining these up, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So when you get 20 years in, your daughter will be in college. Okay. And when your daughter's in college, everything changes again. And I will be there to guide you through it. I promise you.
Thank you.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
But I said to my kid, I said, Lucia, your privacy belongs to you. It is not mine to exploit. If he ever has to see your face, I just didn't do any of that. You know, I see pictures in People magazine of people with their kids in a hot tub, and I go, that's not happening, you know?
Yeah.
And not that, listen, that's for them, that's fine. Maybe that's what holds their family together.
Yeah. And everybody's different. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's different. But what holds mine together
Yeah.
is our sense of solidarity, because the world is going to be the world that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can give them that security and safety, all the better. And I would like her images that affect her imagination about herself
Mm-hmm.
come from the women she came from,
Yeah.
not from a celebrity.
Yes, I think that's great. And I think, I think you've done such a beautiful job, because I come up against this so often, because I am just so madly in love with my daughter, and I want to write about her and tell everybody the smart things that she says and how cute she is, and show everybody how cute she is. But that's her decision to make, not mine to make for her, is how I personally feel. And I don't think that the way I personally feel is what anybody else should do. It's just my own choice. But
Let me put that coda on there.
yeah, right. But let me say, one of the things that I really look forward to at the end of writing a book is the acknowledgements. And I know there's a lot of authors who play it very, very cool. And they're like, I would like to thank, and they give a list of names, couldn't have done this without you. Thank you. And it's this big. And meanwhile, I'm sitting here and I'm like, and then thank you to this person, and I'm like letting all of my emotions out on the page every single time. And they're like so long. And this book is a very moving book. I don't think anybody's going to be surprised to know that it's one that sticks with you, that it's one you just sort of want to hug to your chest when you're done with it, which is just about like the most I can ask of a book. But you get to the end, which feels, just like a powerful moment. And then your acknowledgements start. And I was just really, really moved by them. And I would encourage people to read them. And I also just felt, again, such a kindred spirit with you, because you've got over 6 pages here of acknowledgements. And I just felt so, I was like, yes, this is what I love to see, is we are, as writers, we make things up, and it's fiction, but we're inspired and we're moved by the people around us, and we need the people around us to do what we do. Right. And I would say your story is one of loving people, and it's a big hearted book. And these are big hearted acknowledgements. And what you've said to your daughter, I was just really moved by. And the fact that your daughter is named after your grandmother.
Yeah. Yeah. Her name's
is, and is that the same grandmother that was in your heart? That's
my mother's mother.
Okay.
Kelly. And then my grandmother, Viola. I thought, Taylor, I don't know if you felt this way. I thought for sure I was going to have twins. My mother's a twin, and my first cousins and my father's brother and sister are twins. Mm-hmm. So both my grandmothers had twins.
Oh, so I thought I was going to have twins, but it was only because that's the only way I could justify how much weight I had gained. I was like, this has to be twins. Otherwise.
How about me? How about me? Every time I see a picture of myself and I'm fatted and I go, oh, I was pregnant then. It's like 2 years ago. You know what I mean? She was like 17. I'm sorry, I was pregnant then. I used that pregnancy card for, I don't know, 20 years.
I just remember being like 3 or 4 months pregnant, and I was like, I don't think I was supposed to gain this much weight. It must be twins. I was just convinced.
Were you ravenous? I was so ravenous when I got pregnant. I would eat. I remember making these sandwiches on the stove with cheese in them. Yeah. And I was still hungry.
Yeah. I was just super hungry and very, very tired. And so,
I was tired too. A lot of
you just have to sleep. But I found your acknowledgements incredibly moving. And I think it feels like a heart expanding novel in a lot of ways.
My editor insisted, the research on this, I have to credit Cynthia Olson out of Spokane, Washington, who happens to be my best friend. She was a history major. She's also an attorney, but her passion in life is research. So what she loves to do. When I found this story over in Scotland, I called her and I said, hey, get moving on this one. This is it. I can't find anything out about it. And well, it turns out that, I love to write immigrant stories because it was a word of honor in my home when we were growing up. I don't understand what's happening why we don't embrace other
Mhm.
new. I don't know why, because I learned this from a great Italian craftsman. Tradition can only thrive in a state of change.
Interesting.
So if you try to
Interesting.
hold on,
Yeah.
you can't.
Mm-hmm.
Tradition moves
Mm-hmm.
humanity. It's not we
That's
think
what
of,
makes it strong, right? Yeah.
we think of it kind of sometimes in a state of stasis.
Mm-hmm.
But my
Yeah.
editor wanted me to put some of the books in.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay. So I put some of the books in that, but I couldn't even give you all of them. Because it was over the course of almost 5 years.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about talk about this research, because you've rendered a lot. We're in Scotland, we're in Italy. It's beautifully rendered. It feels so transportive, which I think that's always a thing that people love in books. But right now, I mean, sometimes you just need to go someplace else for a little while, and you offer such a beautiful escape. What was the research like for this?
Well, it started with an accident.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, the gem cutting.
Yes.
Kristen Dornan-Krantz called me and said, I can't come to New York and take this class. And I was like the blood stops in my body when I hear school. I'm like, I'm not doing it. He said, take my place. It's at Christie's. And I was like, I don't want to do that. But then she convinced me, and I went, okay, I'll take the class. And it was called Muggles and Maharajis, Magnificence. And it was all about the mining of the rubies and mining of emeralds, and how the diamond that your husband gave you
Mm-hmm.
is not new. Like when you get a diamond ring.
Yeah.
It's usually, well, it lived in the ground. We know millions of years. Everybody knows that part of the story. But what you don't know is that in India, in ancient times, they made these incredibly ornate necklaces. Well, by the 1920s and 30s, Cartier and the big label companies, Tiffany's, would send people to India to buy these up. So they would break apart these necklaces. And we studied one necklace that was, I think out of one stone, I think they said it got like 400 engagement, 1 carat engagement rings, 400 carats. So it was like, I don't know, big, like a deck of cards.
Oh my God.
This fascinated me. So I thought to myself, well, that has a property.
Mm-hmm.
That has a power.
Yeah.
That has something, because it's not new to me. It's
Mm-hmm.
old.
Mm-hmm.
So that class really turned my head. I thought, well, now this is interesting, but that's not, as you know, Taylor, that's not a novel. That's an interesting sidebar, right? It's not
These
really
are elements, right? Yeah.
Mhm. But I held on to the ruby idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wanted to find a way to dramatize women in the culture. And that the bedtime story came about the elephant. There are people writing to me about that, the fables at the beginning and at the end, they love them.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, why? Well, because it represents life to them on a certain level of the put upon woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All of the stuff out of the mind, which I thought, oh, that's interesting. I didn't think of it like that. So once I had the class, then I thought, oh, okay, now how am I going to then build the rest of the story? The Ethiopian Italian is real. A lot of people don't know that there are Black Italians. There are Jewish Italians.
Mm-hmm.
There are Italian Scots, which I really didn't know that.
Yeah, sure.
We were all over the world, but that goes for every culture, you see.
Mm-hmm.
So the research had to validate. So, okay, so I get to Scotland, I go to that church, St. Andrew's, just to look at it, because it was Protestant and it flipped to Catholic. Oh, it was Catholic, flipped to Protestant for 350 years, the whole Mary Queen of Scots story, and then back to Catholic. And there was a wedding. And so I attended the wedding in the back, me and the bagpiper. And I get swept up in weddings so much to the point that it's really weird. And I went outside afterwards and I'm taking pictures because there was a wedding in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I thought maybe I could use this color scheme or something. Anyhow, a voice behind me says, "Who are you?" And I turned around because I think I'm invisible when I crash.
Right.
And I said, oh, I turned out it's a priest. I said, oh, Father, I'm just a tourist, just passing through. And he said, what's your name? And I told him, and he said, you're Italian. And I said, yes, I am Italian American. He said, go look at the garden. And it's the memorial garden of the Arendora Star. 70 years later, it was put up in 2010. It's not that long ago.
No.
And in a memorial for the Italian Scots that died aboard this ship. And here's what happened in a nutshell, folks, and it's the backbone of my novel, of the love story of Domenica, her first love story, because there's two. Winston Churchill panicked on June 10th, 1940, and he thought, that there was the fifth column and there had been anti-Italian sentiment in the UK, even though they were intermarried and they were working there and the whole thing. But all the stuff they said about was printed in the papers for like 10 years, propaganda. I actually paid a lot of money to put one of those articles in there so that the reader could really see what was going on. And of course, some people believed it and some people didn't.
Right.
But these were communities that got along. Well, basically, when Mussolini declared war, Churchill panicked and said, collar the lot of them and ship them out. And that's why you have Italians in Australia and the Falklands and New Zealand and Canada. They shipped out all the men. And then there was a tragic event. And Cynthia will tell you this, to dig that story out, because they put fake stuff in the newspapers then.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was only 2 years later that they figured it out.
Yeah.
But it destroyed those families completely. I mean, they never came home and they never knew why. And sometimes it took, there's still family members seeking facts about it. They want to know.
Well, and I think what this story does well, and it's again what we were talking about before, the past informs the present. World War II for a lot of people, it feels like it was a long time ago. And it in the grand scheme of things, not much time has passed. We are still feeling the reverberations of this. And you do that very well, that the life that Domenica has leads to Matilda, eventually leads to Anina and the things that she's facing today. So let's talk a little bit about Domenica, because I just think she's badass. Domenica she's a nurse. And I will say that I was really taken with a number of scenes with her and the way that she is a nurse, which is to say that she is formidable and she is driven and she has conviction. And so
nurses are the backbone of healthcare.
Yeah.
So I love nurses, and I do and Taylor, someday when you come to New York, we'll do it. The St. Vincent's Hospital emeritus, they still meet because they all lived together in a dorm back in the day, and they were all trained at St. Vincent's Hospital, which is now closed, but I think it started in like 1842 or something in the United States. It's crazy, in Greenwich Village. But anyway, they taught me a lot. And then the nuns that I knew that were also sisters in Appalachia taught me a lot. And I have one sister-in-law, of course, who married in, because nobody in my family is in the medical profession. We like to joke that, one Thanksgiving, my uncle's colon fell out. He put it back in and finished dinner. I mean, we don't go to the doctor. We do not go to the doctor. We just don't like doctors. And my poor sister-in-law that is a nurse, we got an email from my brother one year, like basically stop asking her if that mole has an irregular border, that she's on her vacation.
I think that nurses are just and a great story area, and especially when it's not in a contemporary novel, when you look at the role that nurses have always had, but specifically during wartime.
She's a natural nurse too.
Yeah.
Her father cuts his hand, and he cuts his right hand, so he can't sew up the wound with his left, and she did it. She's 10 years old.
Yeah.
She was good at stitch work, but it didn't scare her. to try to alleviate someone's suffering. She welcomed it. And then of course she was trained to be a nurse.
So did she come to,
Got in trouble. Then she got in big trouble.
Well, she's so fully formed on the page. She leaps off the page. And so I'm curious, did she come fully formed to you? What was the process of getting to know her and creating her?
You know, when you go to the beach with your daughter and you're barefoot and your feet sink in, yeah. I felt the rootedness of her.
Aww.
If you notice in the beginning, like I chose summer because I loved this little piece of information that I found, that Italian kids did not wear shoes in the summer, and the bottom of their feet were smooth, but built up. It wasn't calloused like our feet would be, but it was like nature created shoes on the bottom of their feet because they were in the sand all the time. Tuscany. And I loved that. And so I felt her, and I felt those little, I don't have pierced ears. And weirdly, neither does my daughter. We said we do it together when she was 13. We missed that.
But you're just going clip-ons?
I do clip-ons.
I love it. I love it.
And my mother was a clip-on person, and my sisters are all pierced, and I have 4 sisters. So I just never did it. You know, I don't know why. I just didn't. So, but she has what they did in Italy when the kids are really little. It's a very thin strand of gold, but they lace it through sort of, and it's not exactly a hoop, but it looks like a hoop. And they're so delicate when they're little girls that it's almost such as a glint. I felt every aspect. Look, I could even describe her now.
Yeah.
And what she was wearing, and the work apron. That's one of my favorite things, is that work apron. Because they needed stuff to carry things in, because you were asked to fetch water, you were asked to collect sticks, you were asked to, sometimes it would just be, you know, things you would find that you needed to transport from point A to point B. You didn't have a purse, you used the apron. There were scissors in there, maybe a pen knife. Yeah. And
this is exactly what I mean. I think everyone that comes to this book, if you haven't read it yet, maybe you've already read it, maybe you're ready yet, but I think the detail and the care and the feeling, which Adri, you so clearly have in you, is in here. And that's why I think it's just such a spectacular and transportive book. And I know we have audience questions now, but I just loved it. And thank you for sharing it with us. And
I love you. And I love your writing. I love your books. And I'm so happy that you have become a phenom on the American literary scene, Taylor.
Thank you. Thank you.
We need you, and we're rooting for you. And you know, I'm here for you 24/7, and I have big plans for you.
I truly, let me say, I think when it comes to especially women in business and art, having mentors and women to look up to and women that believe in you is so important. And that is part of why I started this by saying just how obsessed I am with you. Is I really do feel like I could come to you. And I think that's so important. You know, if there's anybody out there, like, who maybe there's a young person who you see something in, like, just Adriana's faith in me has meant so much and makes me feel like I could fly. And so it really does make a difference.
Do when you can.
Well, and I think what's important about that, Adriana, because I think you're younger than I am, I think, and helping younger women succeed and having a voice that's out there. Like, we want 20 books from you, Taylor. You know, you have the 20 books, Adriana. You know what I mean? We need those voices. We need this to be a career path that young women can continue with, like you did, Adriana.
So
you
true.
know?
And you know, I had them, and I still do, and I have my peers. Kristen Hanna, Lisa Wingate.
Right.
Oh, I don't want to leave anybody out. Lisa Scottolini. Baldacci. I mean, if I leave anybody out. See, that's why I did, like, when I had to do that thing by the book, which they'll make you do. I couldn't mention any of you, because if I mentioned, it was like children.
Yeah, then you got to mention everybody.
Yeah, so I did. Here was the rule: you had to be over 70, and I would mention you. Because when you're over 70, you deserve somebody to
You
mention.
deserve
right.
attention.
Right.
I-
love
My thinking. But anyway, it's so true. You're hitting the gong there for me, because we not only should, we must, because I want to see the full bouquet of Taylor Jenkins Reid. I want to see how she visualizes things. And for too long, we've been kept out of places.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
We're
we
made to
started-
think there was
started the
only
movie
room.
business. We started it, and the minute they started making cash, we were out.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
we were typing the scripts again. We
Yeah.
weren't writing them.
Well, and I think too, we're just often told there's only room for one of us.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
there's
Great
this false
thought.
sense that we're competing. And it really
There's
has
not, yeah.
not been my experience. And that we can all rise together.
And also, and this is really important to all these three women that you're looking at right now, is that we absolutely help promote and push our sisters of color.
Yes.
Right.
Now, not
It's
that
an
they-
obligation.
But
Yes.
I'm talking, Nick Stone,
Yes.
Quinn Julie Wong. I
Yes.
could keep going. I mean, these are,
Yes.
Jean Kwok,
Jocelyn Jackson, yeah.
Yeah.
but see, I know Rita Dove and Nikki Giovanni,
Mm-hmm.
Smith,
Mm-hmm.
and they inspire me. So
Yeah.
there you go. See, it's
But I
Yeah.
also like the full bouquet, I think is such a great thing, Adriana, because I think what's happening now is there seems to be like one book, two book, and then it's like, then
Yeah.
there doesn't seem to be this breadth anymore, like writers like you and Kristen and some of these. We need that younger generation doing that,
And we need to give them time. I
and
mean,
we
that
need them
was the thing
time and
too, like,
space.
I was really fortunate that I was given a couple of books to figure out what I was doing. And I
Yep.
think so often we
I
don't do that.
agree.
Yeah.
Formative books, and I did a series because that
Mhm.
helped me. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know how to do the other thing. And it took me, I almost had to be put in a hospital when I went out of first person.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This first person was so natural to me.
Yeah.
And in Lucia, now that's like 4 books in, I bookended it with the omniscient voice. And really, I thought it was like, to me, carbon marble. I was like,
Yeah.
I can get this done. It was hard. Now I don't even think about it. But see, you find your way there. Now,
Yeah.
see, and I have to ask this, Taylor, because I'm so excited to read the new one. I can hardly stand it. It's a character that
Yes.
you've already created. See, that's smart.
Right.
That right there is smart.
Right.
Okay, you
Why
already
do
know.
you double work?
Right.
She's in Malibu Rising. You don't have to have read Malibu Rising, but part of what I think is fun about it is that, it's nice to be able to explore a character who in one book doesn't get as much time.
Right. Well, Nick.
But here's what's so weird. When I read Malibu Rising, I thought about her and that whole world.
Yeah.
Thought, how interesting that she's a tennis star.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to make sure you get a copy. We're going to get
By the
you.
way, I was on the high school tennis team.
Well, then you're probably going to read the book and find out all the mistakes.
I
Don't
would
tell me.
pick up a tennis racket now if you gave me.
I love it. Okay, I neglected at the top of this, and so hopefully, Adriana, congratulations! Number 4 New York Times bestseller debut. Awesome! That is so. I mean,
Thank
you know what? I'm sorry. It's people think, oh, New York Times. It's not easy to get on.
No.
It is not. And so, thank you to everybody that's like purchased and made that
Thank you
happen.
to everybody that gets it from Warwick's. I mean, I think, have we made it clear, Taylor and me, for now, these many years, go to your indies.
Yes.
And by the way, it couldn't be easier to order online from Warwick's. Just
Hello.
order from them.
And Tattered Cover, who's a part of our customer, who's putting
Oh,
this
I
on
forgot
too.
about
Yeah.
Tattered Cover.
That's okay.
I love the
mention
Tattered
it.
Cover, and they've opened up like 3 new stores or
I
so.
know. Okay, what I'm really mad about though is I have the part of the perk of being in this business is we do get these advanced reader, like Taylor's going to give you hers. I don't have the acknowledgements.
Oh,
So I missed a whole, so I
You're
have
gonna get-
something
yeah.
new to go look at in the hardcover. I can't
That's
wait.
right.
I can't
Yeah.
wait. So I'm so glad you said that because the ending of this
Now
book
you know.
was just, I was
Yeah.
telling Taylor in the green room, it takes a lot to get to me because I just am, oh, this book is got it. It just got, it's so good. It's so good. Okay, let's get to the questions, or we're going to run out of time, and audience members are going to get mad at me and send me nasty letters. Sorry, we don't want any nasty letters. So this is from Anonymous, but Adriana, what type of research did you do for this novel? We found out a little bit about the food, the history, the gorgeous jewelry. So you touched on it a little bit, but was there something else that like you didn't touch on that you kind of want to let people know about?
Well, it helps if you're writing a story to be in the place it happens. I don't think it's essential though.
Mhm.
And I don't understand all these arguments going on about that we can't write certain characters. What are you talking about? It's your imagination.
Right.
I mean, in my imagination, I'm Sophia Loren and Boy on a Dolphin. That doesn't mean it's true. It's just my imagination. That's what I am.
Right.
Okay. You see Kay Ballard, I see Sophia Loren. Okay. So that's how I look at it. I know, really. That callback to Kay Ballard, there's two people we need to look her up. We got Google her, please. But the thing is, in terms of research, it is a huge process in historical fiction. Now, let's just say you have a tennis star. You have to know who won those matches those years. When was the Bobby Riggs thing? How did that have an effect? What's the halo effect of, say, the Williams sisters, or
I'm stressed out with just you listing these things.
Okay, I know, right. Everybody's net.
It's like the past 2 years of my life. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, and it's hard.
Yeah, it is hard.
Look, I'm going to tell you, I wrote a book called Tony's Wife because I wrote 3 books about American craftsmanship in working class, in the music, in the movies, and in television and theater. Okay, Kiss Carlo. In Tony's Wife, I have the character with a transistor radio in 1930 something. I think I got 500 letters about that. And I knew it. I knew that the radios were gigantic, and it was like the boom box that John Cusack holds up in the 30s, right? And I went, I'm just going to do a transistor. to my ever peril, I did.
To those 500 emails.
Listen, it's like when your parents used to say to you, you knew it was wrong, but you did it anyway.
You gotta live with the consequences.
He said, just put a disclaimer. Just put a disclaimer. Well, I did it. Nobody cared about the disclaimer. They were like,
no,
she's an idiot. I'm not reading another word of her. Anyway, fine. But the research is the wafted. I don't know anything about jewelry. The truth is, I like fake jewelry more than real jewelry. Real jewelry scares me.
Me too.
I'll lose it. Does it? I mean,
totally. Yeah.
And like I travel, I don't take a wedding band. I don't. That real stuff stays at home. I'm not going to carry that around. But there's people that are really into real. And then I had to understand how they do this. And this is interesting in a family, like in my family, farmers became butchers, who became tanners, who became shoemakers. So if they were Tuscany, there's gem cutters in Lucca because they worked in the marble quarries. They know how to cut rock. And then it goes from there. So that fascinated me. So the classes helped. And also the being in Scotland, because Scotland is, I grew up in Appalachia, in the southwestern tip of Virginia, near Tennessee, Kentucky, and the Scots people are those people, my people, and I love them. They are the most stubborn people, and they're the best people you ever know. But when I was in Scotland, I was like, here we go. No. Yeah. So I think going there to answer the question it's helpful, but you don't have to. You don't have to make it up.
Yeah. Okay, I've got 2 more questions. Matthew, speaking of Appalachia, do you miss Little Stone Gap? Is a question for
Big Stone Gap.
Oh yeah, Big Stone. He said Little Stone. Okay.
Did he say Little Stone? That's okay. Little Stone is cute.
Right.
But that's not it.
Okay.
Yes, of course I miss it. That's home.
That's home. That's home. Okay, this is for both of you. We'll close it out because we can't take too much of your time. So this is both of you. Taylor, I'm going to ask you this one first. why did you decide to become a writer?
I just found that when I really loved a story, it wasn't enough to love it. I wanted to do something like it. It just felt like it called within me to look at this art. I want to make my own art. And it took me a really long time to figure out what that art would be and how I would contribute, whether, on what level. Is it Hollywood? Is it publishing? And then eventually I just said, well, you know what, let me just try and write a book. And that was that was the first time in my life I could definitively say I am on the right track. This is it. This is where I was supposed to get to. And that feeling that I found it was like my mid-20s, I was like, I know exactly where I'm going. And I've felt that since. And it is such a blessing to have that clarity of purpose.
Love that. How about you, Adriana?
Well, I grew up in a family that they made things with their hands. They survived by the labor of their own hands. They sewed, they made shoes. And I thought, what is it that I can do? What do I do? And really, truthfully, I was lying in bed thinking about my dad the other night and thinking, before he died, he asked me, is there something you didn't get as a kid before he died? I'm paraphrasing. And I said, I really, really wish I would have taken the piano. My father was a great piano player. And some of the kids in the family got piano lessons and some didn't. I thought it was too expensive because there were a lot of us. And I don't regret it. And maybe I can still learn to do it, but I'm very musical. And my dad said to me, I wish you would have asked me for the piano lessons. And I said, why? He said they were $1 a lesson. When I was a kid, I thought like a bicycle, $10 million, I thought, please, I don't think I'm very bright, but then when I get it. So I would say to you, the reason that I became a writer is because I could connect emotionally to this art form. I loved to read, and I don't judge what I write. I thought maybe I would be a poet. I know I'm a playwright. When I'm in a theater, I am in the highest spiritual state. We did a show in a theater the other night, and I was like, this is my people. When I walk into an empty theater, I'm like, I know what I'm doing in here. So, and this is something Taylor and I have discussed. You must dramatize your work if you can, and you have the instinct to do it. Do not leave it to others, because they're going, you don't have to do everything, but you must do it because it's very natural. And they've only kept us out of it because there's a few boys that want to make all the money.
Yeah. And
take all that always the way. And take all the
follow the money conversation. Yeah. But books are it. They're it. They are everything. And look, it's the only thing during this pandemic that people, of course, you turn to books because we're seeking knowledge. We are seeking connection. We're seeking a way to discuss with one another. We had 600 people in a ballroom today talking about books.
So fantastic. Back to the dramatization of the books. What drives me crazy is when authors don't get the accolades in the hall. It just drives me insane. It just drives me.
Well, listen, we don't buy that. Taylor and I are in the club.
Talk about that for a long
time. That could be a whole other hour worth of a conversation. Can I just drop that pin in there?
But can I just say this about it? When you go to Hollywood and people don't like writers, they shouldn't be doing it.
Right.
And stay away from those people, because without the written word, you know what? I go around saying it all the time. In the beginning, it was a word. In the beginning was the word.
Yep.
Now, of course, it goes on to say the word was God, depending on what you think the creator is. But I'm saying in the beginning was the word. That is the most important, valuable, essential art form. Is the
which
story.
Circles back to.
I love it.
Which circles back to tell the stories and tell everybody the stories.
And by the way, they don't all have to be epics.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a conversation at a dinner table that is so juicy, it goes on for 200 pages. Perfect.
Right.
Reinvent.
Yes.
Do it your way. That's all I can say.
Yes.
Ladies, we have run out of time. I love both of you. I can't thank you enough, and I can't thank Dutton enough for allowing Warwick's and Tattered Cover to host you tonight for this.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Tattered Cover. But to my Taylor Jenkins, Reid, love you. And I'm so excited for August to get here.
Thank you. Thank you
Yes.
for having me here tonight. It's so lovely to get to celebrate this book and you, and just, I'm so happy to be here.
Yep.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
All the best, both
All
of you.
right. We'll
Good
all
night.
talk soon. All right.
Good
Bye.
night.